Conference Championship Saturday in the books, and here to break it down, CBS Sports college football analyst, the two-time Super Bowl champ, Bryant McFadden. B-Mac, what a day of action. We got to dig into it all here, and let's start with the SEC title game.
Yes, sir.
From 3 points in 59 minutes against Auburn to hanging a number on the best defense in football, in college football. How did Alabama turn things around so quickly, and where did you see the biggest change week to week with Old St. Nick again dominating December?
Well, I think for me, it's all about the Heisman favorite in Bryce Young playing like a Heisman candidate, playing like a Heisman winner. Today, he was the best player on the football field, easily. I mean, the plays he was able to make with his arm, improvising and making things happen with his legs. He made the great, dominant Georgia's defense look like an average ball club on that side of the football field because he was in his bag today. His pass catchers were creating separation. Jamison Williams was the most big-time transfer that hit the portal before the season started, because if they didn't have him on their team, I don't know where Alabama would be currently, and he's playing like one of the best wide receivers in college football. You had John Mechie III before that injury, and just being able to capitalize on the opportunities, especially in the red zone. So me personally, Bryce Young, what we saw last week, the slow start, 3 quarters of average play, and then the fourth quarter, you talked about how they were able to put their foot on the gas and just score points when needed to against Auburn. That same storyline kind of carried in today's ball game. The up-tempo attack, not allowing Georgia to kind of settle down and be focused and dialed in. They were playing on their heels the entire ball game, clearly in the first half, and because of that, we saw a lot of success coming from the Crimson Tide.
Clean pocket for Young all day long. We talked a little bit about the struggles in the rushing game. They did get north of 100 yards, but just north. This is not that dominant rushing attack, B-Mac. Before we move on to these other games, do you have any worries moving forward about Alabama and sort of their just kind of the one-track offense that this has become? Spread them out, get guys in space, and try and score through the passing game?
No, not really, because we saw improvements. Even though they didn't dominate in running the football, they didn't allow 1 sack. Remember, that was the Achilles heel for their team. Last week against Auburn, they allowed 7 sacks, and because of that, I felt like Georgia, with that outstanding defensive line unit, would have success in at least collapsing the pocket and putting their hands on Bryce Young, but they were not able to do so because the offensive line unit from Alabama, they were dialed in. They were focused. So, yes, they didn't run the football well, but let's keep it real. It's hard to run against Jordan Davis and crew. You're talking about a guy who's probably north of 360 and can run a 4.7. I don't want to run against him either. But they were able to get creative, and strategically speaking, they were able to find success running the football. And, oh, by the way, they outrushed their opponent in Georgia offensively. So that's a big-time plus for Bama.
The passing attack really makes running the ball so much easier when you're getting guys out in space. Again, very difficult for Georgia to stop that two-pronged attack. Talking about the Big Ten now. Number 2, Michigan, handling a team that just sort of backpedaled their way into the Big Ten title game. 42-3 is your final score. Now 42 points in back-to-back weeks for that Michigan offense. Unranked preseason. A coach that a lot of question marks around him. The belief came within for this Michigan team. How impressive was this win, and how do you project them moving forward?
Very impressive for me, because I wanted to see how they would start off. You know, looking at what happened last week, playing against a team that you hate, you don't like at all, beating them at home, were they still in the moment of beating the Buckeyes? And clearly that game was behind them. They were focused, dialed in, jumped out early, 14 points on the scoreboard, kind of slowed down a little bit, and defensively, Aiden Hutchinson and the crew, they took over. So surprisingly speaking for me, I was so surprised. I felt like Michigan would cover the 12 points. I mean, they were a big-time favorite in this ball game, but seeing how well they were able to dominate for 4 quarters was very, very impressive, and they were one of the hottest teams in the playoffs that will be playing in the playoffs. You have to like their chances regardless of who they may face off against.
We'll see how it all shakes out come Sunday night when those rankings do come. We'll also talk to our Jerry Palm in a moment. Elsewhere, Utah bludgeons its way to a Pac-12 title, taking care of Oregon for the second time in a few weeks. Big 12 eats itself alive. Baylor's your champ there. The Bryant McFadden Conference, also known as the ACC, that goes to Pitt, winning tickets all over the place for our guy B-Mac. But Cincinnati, we've got to talk about the AAC here. They complete the perfect season, and by all estimations will be on the inside when we do hear those 4 names called on Sunday night. They now carry that weight, sort of, to represent the little man. the group of five, the non-Power 5 team. We're talking about big picture here in terms of expansion and things that are to come in the college football landscape. How important is it for Cincinnati to represent the little man here come New Year's Eve?
It's very, very important because oftentimes when you look at the playoff status, the rankings, the group of five is always left on the outside looking in. And most people say, well, they're not deserving of being in because of the schedule, who they're playing against. But in this season for Cincinnati, they played who was on their schedule, and they beat the teams they were supposed to beat, which was every team. They knew they needed to be flawless, couldn't have any blemish on their record, and they took care of business. And being the only ranked team that will be in the top four is huge for their university, but huge for their conference. This is a big deal because think about this. The group of five will have a representative in the top four when the Pac-12 and the Big 12 won't. That's huge.
It speaks to the current status of college football. It speaks to some of these coaches and what they're getting out of their team. And Cincinnati can walk into that college football playoff with their head high, representing a group of five team. Bryant McFadden breaking down Championship Saturday here on CBS Sports HQ.